Hello, everyone. This is your host, Jawad Mir at Kingdom Dreams podcast. Welcome to another episode. Today, my guest is David Smith. I had him on the podcast a few weeks ago where we talked about immersive visual effects. I have him back. Today, we talked about Joker 2 as well as Daddio, and he showed some great visuals in terms of in terms of showcasing what he does and what his company does, behind the scene photos, behind the scene videos, tied in with the actual footage of the film. I had a great time talking with him, and it was something really brand new and learning experience as to what kind of visual effects elements are ahead of us and are already here. So without further ado, here is my conversation with David Smith. How have you been?
Excellent. Excellent. Things are good. We've been actually mercifully busy the last couple of months. Our business has really picked up, so that's been helpful.
That's amazing. That's awesome. Glad to hear. Any plans for upcoming Thanksgiving in a couple of days?
Actually just going to be staying home, hanging with friends, and originally I was going to be traveling to London to visit my wife. She's on a show over there right now. But we moved the trip up, so I actually visited her last week, and then she'll be coming back here stateside for Christmas. So actually, I think she's been on your podcast before, Alicia Robbins. So she shoots
Oh, she's
Bridgerton,
your
and
wife?
yep,
Oh,
yep.
wow. Oh, okay. Amazing. That's awesome. Yeah, I had a great time chatting with her, even though I had only seen like the most recent season of Bridgerton. Yeah, that's amazing.
Yeah,
Good to know.
yeah, she's back on it now, so it's going well.
How is she otherwise? Doing well?
Yep, very well.
Good, good. Well, that's good to know. And it's good to have you back on the podcast. Really had a great time chatting with you last time.
Thanks.
And excited to chat about Joker 2 and I think Presumed Innocent, if I'm not mistaken.
Yep,
Um,
I have a couple of behind the scenes stuff from some other
awesome.
projects too that we can talk about. So just deep dive into the weird and wacky world of what we do.
Yeah, no, you can take the claim the whole thing conversation. Just start with whatever you want to start with. I mean, you can talk about Joker 2 if you want.
Sure.
Like what was your company's role in making the immersive environments in Joker 2? So I'll let you take this field.
Sure. We did Joker 2. We also did Joker 1 as well.
Okay.
And it was really nice to kind of be able to revisit the same kind of crew, the same material, the same cast. So it was a bit of a homecoming in that way, which is nice. But we basically created all of the 360-degree virtual environments for the driving sequences in the film. So when you see the characters driving around in a car, mostly for the sake of Joker 2, it was when Arthur Fleck is on his way to and from court from Arkham Asylum. So that kind of commute, which happens a few times in the film. We shot all of that in a cold day in January a couple years ago now in New York. So New York doubling as Gotham. So we were on the production for, I think it was about 3 or 4 days. But we did a couple of months of R&D and development of the rig that we used for it in advance of that. So shooting some tests here in LA, and then developing a new array system that we use for shooting those 360 plates. So actually, is it okay for the recording if we do some screen share? Does that
Yeah,
work?
yeah,
Because I've
yeah,
got some.
absolutely.
So this is just some clips that I grabbed from the trailer. I slowed them down a little bit so that we could talk about it a bit more. So what you're seeing here is us actually going into some of the tunnels in New York. And everything that you see that isn't the interior is a curved LED wall. You can kind of see where the wall ends and the ceiling begins, where there's a little bit of a color shift up here with the lighting. So that turns into this. So basically, we have our plate playing in the background, and then the camera is filming the actor in the car. So that gives the illusion that you're actually driving when in fact you're sitting on a soundstage on the other side of the country from where that content was originally created. And so this is the us on the shoot. This is actually in one of the New Jersey shoots. This is the rig that we use to film this kind of material with. So it's in this case, it was a 17 camera array. So there's 2 rows of 8 cameras. And then a 17th camera that's looking straight up. And the reason for having so many cameras, the 8 cameras is able to cover the world in 360, where we're able to see in every direction. So you can think of it like Google Street View on steroids. The second row of 8 is there to let us get a second exposure. So we're able to get a hot exposure from one array and a much darker exposure from the second array. And the reason for that was actually what we saw in this clip. If it's going to let me jump through, it should. Where there's a section here where we're heading. This is actually under the UN building in New York. And we're looking across the river at sunrise. So on the virtual production stage, we needed to be able to expose for both the dark tunnel interior on some angles and expose for the bright sun and sunrise on the other, so that when you cut into the shot, you have detail in the tunnel, but you also still have detail outside. That would be way too difficult for a single camera system to be able to hold that kind of dynamic range. So we're able to create a high dynamic range file, stitched file, using that these 2 rows of cameras. So all of that footage gets merged together into one big stitched file. So that stitched file ends up looking something like this.
It's
So
almost like a 3D camera kind of feel.
So this is actually now has become the standard for creating VR video as well. So you can put a headset on and look around inside this, but we can also look around inside it on an LED screen. So what you're looking at here is what's called an equirectangular projection. So it's kind of like the world map when you were in junior high school, which is taking a sphere of content and stretching it out to make it look to fit it onto a 2-dimensional plane. So just like you see the world map where Antarctica looks all funky and the North Pole looks funky, that's the same thing that's happening here. So when we take that footage and let's see if it's going to let me do this. So you can take that footage and project it out onto an LED wall. So this is a wall also here in Culver City at Amazon. So this is that same plate that you just saw, but reprojected onto the LED. And because it's a sphere, we're able to project it onto the LED where the geometry of the screen is corrected for in the projection. So it ends up looking where it looked kind of warped and weird on this version. When you unwrap it, all of that geometry goes straight again and becomes correct. So when you're standing in the middle of the volume, you can look in any direction and it looks like you're really in the actual place. So, and let me see if I can.
That's crazy. That's just
Are you able to see? Is this working now? Is the Vimeo?
Yeah. Okay. It's working. Yeah. It's
so this is our 360 player. So I'm now controlling this. This is one of our stock plates that we sell as part of our library. But so the movement of the car is recorded in the plate, but the movement of the camera, and I'm putting finger quotes around camera, is actually me dragging my mouse right now. So I can look in any direction and see what's there. So all of that content exists in the footage. We can watch this guy as we go by him. So that's all in the plate. And what this means is now on set, the filmmaker is no longer limited by what angles they can shoot. You can now basically point the camera anywhere. And so that was the other part of what we helped with on Joker 2. At the end of the film, there's a I don't know if I have that clip here. I don't think I do. But at the end of the film, we have essentially a oneer, an uncut sequence where Arthur, after the courthouse explodes, he escapes in a car. And you have one shot that leads from the blown up section of Gotham. He gets in the car and ultimately goes for a wild ride through the streets of Gotham City. He's like on the floorboard of the car and then stumbles out of the car at the end and then goes for a run through the streets of Gotham. So the crazy trick about that sequence, aside from the fact that there's a couple of very cleverly hidden cuts within it, is when he's outside the street, he's actually running on a set where they had the the explosion and the debris and everything. Inside the car is now on an LED sound stage for the drive, and then he pulls back out of the car, actually onto a street in downtown Los Angeles. So in that one uninterrupted shot, you're actually traveling through three completely different shoot days, three completely different sets in multiple states. And so the plate, and even when we're inside the LED portion of it, that's actually comprised of three separate plates that were merged together. So when you're in the backseat of the car and the camera tips down to him on the floorboard and then tips back up to the windows, in each of those moments that you're down on the floorboard, the plate actually changes to a different version. So there's one version that we shot in New York. There's a CGI version that kind of bridges the going from the tunnel into downtown. And then there's a third section, which another crew shot here in Los Angeles, that is the bridges together with the downtown LA version of Gotham. So in that one seemingly uninterrupted shot, you have multiple shoot days of the physical production and multiple plates all being merged together into something that feels like one continuous moment. So it's really kind of fun to be able to play with those kind of the smoke and mirrors and the magic to make it feel like a world exists that otherwise you wouldn't have access to.
Yeah, that's crazy what you just showed me, and how, I mean, I've known about it, but just to kind of see it in play, like, especially that whole sequence where the car is just there and there's the big, the screen in the back. And, on the set, and I may have asked you this before,
Sure.
the actual final output of how it's supposed to look, does that does that at all come close to being finished on set? Like, is it like in real time you're looking at? I'm just
Yeah.
wondering if that is okay. How do the actors, and I'm assuming you're on the set or your team is on the set, obviously. Um, what's the actors' reaction to it? I mean, even though plates have been around for a while, but now they've been just sort of more, like you said, things are more studios are keen to use it.
Yeah.
What's their reaction like when they see something like that? If you can think
Yeah,
of
it's a really good question. So the term we use for what you're getting at is called final pixel.
final
And so
pixel.
the idea there is that that the in-camera VFX, which is the overarching term for the new virtual production concept of actually filming actors in front of sorry, I hit the mic. Filming actors in front of LED screens instead of blue or green screens. And blue and green screens haven't gone away. We still use that a lot as well. And there's certain circumstances where that makes more sense, other circumstances where LED makes more sense. But one of the ways that LED makes a lot of sense is just what you've mentioned. And that's being able to give not just the actor a real reference for what world they're living in, but also the rest of the crew. So the camera operator is actually able to see what's happening in their shot. If you're shooting on green screen, you kind of have to imagine it, that, okay, the monster's over in the corner, or the white truck just drove by. If that's an important story point, that white truck means something, it's good for the camera operator to know that the white truck is there, or that the monster's there, or whatever. So by putting that into the LED wall and having it photographed in the moment, it means that everybody is shooting the same movie. Nobody's imagining where things are and how things look. It's really there. And for driving sequences, it turns out to be really effective and sometimes it's funny, you on set, you have to remind the actor, hey, the world's out here. Go ahead and interact with it. Watch the street sign go by, like engage with the world that's around you. Because when you're doing that in reality, your subconscious mind, your eye will lock onto something and track it. And that gives such a deeper degree of immersion for the audience when it feels like the actor is responsive to the environment around them. And so by giving them a physical environment that they can react to, it just deepens everything. Real quick, so I grabbed one little clip that we had.
Sure.
There was another film that we did called Daddio.
We talked about that last time, which
Yeah,
great
so
film, by the way.
oh, did you get a chance to see it?
Yeah, I did.
Yeah,
Oh,
really enjoyed it.
amazing.
So let me see if I can get this to work, because this actually, so this is the director of the film made a nice little piece for us, and she actually talks about exactly this.
I was excited to use this technology. It creates an immersive environment for your cast. So when Sean was driving, he kept almost being afraid he was going to hit pedestrians because there were people crisscrossing, and he was like, oh, right, it's not real. I mean, it is real. We shot the drive on an array car with 9 cameras and then projected the drive. So what you're seeing is real. And then Dakota looks out the window and cars are whizzing by. She could actually see the street lamps and everything. And so they're engaging with a real sense of time and place.
Nothing is more real than real life. And plates capture that, and specifically vendors like PlatePros that know how to capture it correctly. They bring that world into your volume. And now you're just laying on filmmaking on top of that. This is a whole different level of control, whole different level of creativity. There's a new wave of filmmakers that are absolutely understanding the potential and the capacity for this.
I was really happy when they put that piece together for us. It was kind of a surprise because that, I think, sums up kind of, especially from the director's perspective, this is her film, honestly, could not have been made, I think, any other way, especially not within the constraints that they had for time and talent and budget. So being able, with Daddio, we kind of coined the notion that the environment is the third character in that film. We brought New York to the film because it's a very big part of the narrative.
Sure.
And so it was really being able to do plates for a shot here and there. It's always fun to see that, but being able to be such a meaningful part of a larger, like the project as a whole, was really special. It was really cool.
Yeah, no, I would like to say 2 things. So one thing you were talking about earlier about, the characters being involved with the surroundings, right? You can tell even nowadays, like with green screen stuff, it's all great, fathom, and amazing. But when somebody's looking at something and in reality it's not there, no matter how hard visual effects team, and this is not to put down the visual effects team in any way,
Not
it's
at
just
all.
it's just technology. You can see the eyesight kind of going in a little different direction than the object that they're looking at. You can tell. With this technology, you can. And one of the things that I did was David, I saw, which you've seen, I'm sure you've seen Collateral, Tom Cruise and Jamie Foxx movie. Similar concept in terms of a setting, like, but it's out and in, but it's shot a lot of it inside the cab. I saw that the next day after I saw Daddio. I saw it after a long time, and I didn't see any difference in terms of the reaction of the actors and the environment. It just both seem identical to me. And that was in LA, this was in New York.
Yeah, Collateral was one of the first films to really make strong use of the low light capabilities of new digital cameras.
Yeah.
And they did that specifically with the idea of being able to have Los Angeles as a character where it was the first time that you could actually see a palm tree silhouetted against the night sky. Because the film stocks we had prior to that really weren't sensitive enough to be able to capture that level of detail. And yeah, I think it's a great parallel, where both films really wanted the location outside of the vehicle to play a significant role in the narrative. And what's interesting is that both of them made use of new technologies at their time to be able to let that happen. So I actually need to go back and watch it. I haven't seen it since I saw it in the theater originally. But great film. Yeah.
And another one, which is way back. I mean, have you seen Duel?
Oh gosh. Yeah. Well, it's been a long time.
Yeah, so that came out in 1971, which gave Spielberg his career breakthrough before Jaws. So studio executives at the time were telling him to use, those screens in the background, and he fought for like real environments.
Rightly so.
And rightly so, absolutely. But it's incredible that how 55 years later, we're kind of going back in that, but with much more, technology and abilities to make it look as realistic as possible.
Yeah, and it's interesting. I mean, I always make the joke that the techniques that we're using are almost as old as film itself. It's just finding new ways to increase the fidelity, increase the believability. And that's the challenge. That's the part that kind of I wake up every day, intrigued by, is what can we do to make it even better. And there's lots of new things coming along. There's lots of things that we're experimenting with and playing with to be able to make it more believable. Just the fact that I was able to show you that one clip with our plate where I could look around in any direction. We've only really been able to create plates that are pre-stitched like that for the last let's say 2 to 3 years, where the processing power and the software and the camera hardware as well have had a significant amount of small iterative improvements that have given us all of the little technical pieces of the puzzle that we need to be able to offer a plate that is completely 360. Prior to that, it was more cost effective, and at scale, you had to create individual angles looking in individual directions. We could still shoot it all at once, which was a huge advancement even then. But now we can blend it together so you can look in any direction, and you would never know that you were actually looking at the output of multiple cameras.
That's amazing. That's so beautiful. In terms of, you know, in terms of projects that are coming up, right?
Mm-hmm.
I'm just trying to find the right way of saying this. One
Sure.
thing I would love to see, and you don't have to answer it in any way, it's not even a question, it's just a comment, is that, you know, I have sort of become who I am because of Jurassic Park, you know, in terms of my
Sure.
love in directing. I would love to see one day, I mean, there's one coming up next year, and I'm sure there'll be many more, how your technology works on a film, not necessarily like Jurassic Park or Jurassic World, like in a monster, you know, like Godzilla type
Sure.
film, how that is utilized. Would you like to do something like that eventually?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, in a heartbeat. We've done a tiny bit of that style work. We did some work on, gosh, I can't remember what number season it was, for Stranger Things. There's a sequence when the shadow monster is chasing
The
if I
car?
remember right, it was like a station wagon with all the
Yeah,
kids in
yeah.
the back,
It's
and it's kind of lumbering along behind it. So that actually is our plate that CG then added the monster to, and then that was composited in behind the kids in the car. So I think that shot's in our demo reel.
that was
Actually,
season 3, the last episode, and I know this because my kids were rewatching it 2 weeks ago. So
nice,
I know it.
nice.
It's the season 3 last episode.
Yeah. So we shot those plates in Georgia. And actually that was an interesting rig too. We had to create a different version of our array for that as well. It seems like there's a lot of projects that come along, and kind of our standard package of hardware is good for like 95%, but there's always those projects that come along and say, hey, we want to create something unique, something special, something new. And so that's when it's nice. We have I'm actually here at my office in my shop. We have a small machine shop and fabrication facility, so I can actually build the rigs that you're seeing us use. So when a show like that comes to us with a specific need, it's nice to be able to just kind of go out back and whip something up as a prototype to be able to answer a specific need. So
That's awesome. You talked about stock footage that you
Mhm.
have, right? Like stock library. So how do people access that? Number one, like how do they get, you know, license it or whatever?
Mhm.
And is it can anybody, is it in the can
Yeah.
it be in the budget of at any independent filmmaker as well?
Absolutely. So everything is through our website, which is platepros.com, PLATEPROS.com. And basically there's a link in there to that just across the navigation at the top, it says library. And with that, there's a list of locations that we've filmed across the country, where you're able to say, okay, I'm looking for somewhere, you know, Manhattan at night, or I want to go across the Queensboro Bridge at dawn, or I'm in Texas. We're doing a road trip movie and we want to be able to go across country, and we're constantly shooting new plates to add to that library. So actually, right after Thanksgiving, the Saturday after Thanksgiving, I'll be heading back east, and we're going to be doing another cross country road trip with the array vehicle to capture more winter, because it's not just locations, it's also variable seasons. So we capture all of that in advance, and then it's available for license from the website. So definitely, you know, if you find something on the website that you're interested in, if you're working on a film, and we do a ton of work with students, with shorts, if it's a passion project, we're all filmmakers in the company. And we all work on our own projects. We shoot our own shorts and bigger projects too. So we understand the challenges that meet productions at every scale. And so we never want to turn somebody away on price. We're always interested in finding creative ways to be able to contribute really at every scale. So even though it might feel big and intimidating because we've got all these big Hollywood things on there, we do just as much work for, you know, Hallmark movies, Hallmark Christmas movies, or student shorts. So
amazing.
we always want to encourage people, reach out. We're nice people, we're easy to work with, and we understand what you're up against. So don't be bashful, reach out, and we love to collaborate.
That's so cool, man. That's really amazing what you're doing because, you know, for an independent filmmaker or somebody who's making a short, it's just intimidating to even reach out to a studio, right? Because nobody gets back
Sure.
to you or big
Sure.
companies. Um, but so if a student was making a film, right?
Mhm.
Let's say if he or she had a scene in a car or, you know, in I don't know, Boston, let's say.
Yeah.
So they can license the footage, they can buy the stock footage, whatnot. So that's great. Now,
Yeah.
how can they, with such a small budget, and this is just on behalf of people who watch it,
Yeah.
can utilize that in a physical way? Like, how do they create that in the post-production aspect of making that work?
Sure. There's a wide range of versions of the answer to that. So at the simplest level, depending on the nature of the creative goal, we've had students literally take a $300 Walmart OLED TV, like a 55-inch TV, and park it outside the car and load the plate onto a
I love
laptop
it.
and play it back. And you would be surprised. Actually, not just students did that. If there was, I don't remember the TV series, The Mindy Project. So it was a kind of a romantic sitcom TV series a few years ago. One of the final shots of the series is one of the actors driving to the airport. The male kind of romantic lead is driving to the airport in the rain, and they shot that with an OLED TV sitting outside, like as student level as you can imagine. And that shot was on our reel for years because it looked beautiful. So it can be very approachable and very affordable. And you know, there is a little bit of, because of the 360, you have to unwrap the 360. So the
Sure.
playback software is has to be managed a little. You know, you have to have the right software and use it in the right way. We can help walk people through what those are. Some of those software have free trials where you could actually, you know, basically use it for a month. So
Yeah.
if you time that right within your production, you could have access to even the playback software for free. But what's really encouraging is that a lot of film schools are investing in this technology. So we're seeing a ton of LED stages being installed at film schools across the country. NYU just announced their virtual production. They have now an entire branch of the film program is in virtual production. So a lot of students now are actually getting access not just to reaching out to us for a plate, which absolutely they should and they can, but also that they're having access to these kinds of facilities now as well, which is really great to see. Because I think virtual production is one of those things that, when it's being handled correctly, when it's done right, it can really broaden the horizons of what you can do on a conservative budget.
That's really cool, man. I'm again, we talked about this last time. I'm just blown away by all this stuff. Not even though I knew about it, but just
Sure.
especially hearing about the OLED TVs and, you know, necessity is the mother of all inventions, that you just gotta make it work. Any
Yeah, I mean,
thing
you could, the
go
TV, you
ahead.
could also, a video projector works
Yeah,
well. You got to be careful because it's easy to have your lights contaminate the screen. So there's some trade-offs, but yeah, I mean, a $1,000 projector on a bed sheet and it would work. Or stay with green screen. You know, you can throw a green screen up behind the car, and then you still use the 360 plate, but you can load it into After Effects, load it into DaVinci, Premiere. Very accessible tools that any filmmaker is going to be dealing with already have the capacity. For Adobe, they refer to it as immersive video. So if you go down your video effects menu in Premiere or in After Effects,
Yeah.
you'll see a tab called Immersive Video. And under that is a whole series of tools that is specifically designed for working with this 360 content. So it's already baked in. It's already there. Now, 10 years ago, we couldn't say this. It's taken a lot to get these tools to be ubiquitous. But now that they are, it really makes it easy.
It sort of reminds me of when you're talking about the student films and everything. When Saving Private Ryan came out, I think about 8 or 9 years after, I could be wrong about the timing, but around that realm, a couple of guys went to a beach and they kind of just shot three guys, with green outfit. You must have seen that.
I
And how
remember it,
they and how
and
they
then
just
copied and
created
paste
the whole thing.
replicated themselves and
Yeah,
turned it
yeah.
into, and it was amazing. It was
It was.
the end result was really top notch. It's ideas like that where being able to give voice or having smaller voices that wouldn't otherwise be able to kind of get this kind of content out, but being able to achieve it. I mean, I love the guys from Corridor Crew. I don't know if you're familiar with them. They have a VFX based kind of podcast and YouTube channel. And their whole methodology is about using what's new and on the horizon from a technology perspective to be able to create massive budget effects as what's essentially a few guys in a garage. And it's really remarkable to see just how much can be achieved with really a laptop and off-the-shelf cameras or even your iPhone. So yeah, there's I think never been a better and worse time to be a filmmaker. It's the best time because we have easy, inexpensive access to really, really robust tools. But it's challenging because now everybody else has access too. So your stuff has to be really good and really compelling to break through the noise, because now when everybody's got a voice, it's really hard to be the voice that gets heard. So it just means that we've all got to be better.
I couldn't agree. Somebody asked Quentin Tarantino, I think at Comic-Con, at one of his films, how do you distinguish yourself? How do you stand out from others? And he said, just make a effing amazing movie. That's it.
Yeah.
Like that is it. And now with the advent of AI, with OpenAI, OpenAI and I think it's called Soros,
Sora,
and Sora, and then what's that other one called? There's so many. I mean, I was just watching
Runway is one that's making a big
Runway,
splash right now.
Yeah, I mean, I was just watching somebody on LinkedIn posted this person created like a futuristic sci-fi with Asian actors, and it looked so freaking amazing. Like, I mean, it's just amazing where we are right now. It's amazing.
Yeah, and it's both terrifying and encouraging. I think there's because we don't know which side of the coin is going to land up, right? There's an opportunity for these new tools and new techniques to move narrative forward and to move the conversation forward. And I hope that's what happens. And I'm optimistic that it will. But I think the flip side of that coin is a push to use those tools to cut costs at the expense of the creative. And that's the part of it that I'm worried about. If it's an accountant, and no disrespect to the accountants of the world, but if the bottom line is the only metric of success, then we start seeing that creativity is diminished. And I'm hoping that what we're going to find, and I think this is true across, we're obviously going through a massive shift in the way that the industry greenlights projects, where the financing is coming from, what budgets levels. We've had peak TV we've crested, it looks like, and so now it's like, okay, what's the next business model? My hope is that we're going to find new buy-in by filmmakers and storytellers to acknowledge that the stories we've been telling recently haven't been that good, and the audience is responding and has been voting with their wallet and is telling us as an industry that we haven't necessarily been delivering on the promise of good stories well told. and the franchises and the rinse and repeat, which a lot of the financial impetus behind it worked last time, so let's do it again. That's a conservative financial model that's driving the creative in a way that ultimately is not serving the audience. And so my hope is that this restructuring of the industry and this shakeup, the end result of that is that we're going to have a new renaissance. We're going to have a new, you know, a new set of voices coming on that gives us better access to emotion and story and humanity. And so I really am hopeful that that's where we're going.
Yeah, I truly believe in my heart, 100% I'm convinced, and this is not delusional thinking, it's just about how society changes. Like I remember in the 90s when Miramax and DreamWorks came out, like, you know, you saw some of the most amazing films in that decade time.
Yep.
And before that, it was all like 80s was, you know, action and visual effects, and the 70s was similar. And I think we have hit that peak and that threshold of, you know, even like when you approach Netflix for any kind of project, like in terms of documentaries, just in general, all they're looking for is like brand name celebrity bios or true crime. And that eventually people are going to get sick and tired of it. And they want simple things, simple stories that are powerful and they're meaningful, which I would highly recommend. There's a series on Apple TV Plus that my wife and I got into. It's called Bad Sisters.
Oh,
It's I'm based in Dublin. It's
okay.
amazing. It's character driven about five sisters and one of their husbands, and it's awesome. It has nothing to do with remakes, visual effects. It's just
Yeah.
simple storytelling with amazing characters, and that's what people want. And I was craving for something like that, and I fell in love with it. It's, you know, so I truly feel that there is a shift happening for better. I really do.
And in that shift, I think there's an opportunity for new talent, for new voices to be able, you know, I think that is the way you can distinguish yourself, is by putting out content that breaks away from the norm. So don't try to make your own Marvel movie. Unless, I mean, if that's what you're passionate about, rock on, have at it. But in terms of moving the needle forward, you know, I think it's important for people to really tell the stories that inspire them, and hopefully that gives us a window into a version of the world that we might not understand already. And with AI as a storytelling tool, what concerns me there is that AI at its core is an averaging of human experience. You feed in content and it feeds back an interpretation only of that content. So there's nothing that's really revolutionary to come out of that. Maybe it will in the future, and maybe that emergent behaviors will turn into an AI that can write a new thought. But as it stands right now, I think it's still on the creator, on the filmmaker, to express new ideas and to create a new logical branch that isn't just regurgitating the averaging of what's come before. And so if we rely too heavily on AI right now, as it stands, I feel like we're just essentially on a, you know, we're guaranteeing mediocrity, because that is really what it is as a technology. And so I think using it to take away the drudgery and using it as a tool for filmmakers to be able to, you know, whiteboard ideas and have those kinds of back and forth, I think there's value in it. But I think it's wrong, at least as the technology stands now, for us to think of it as a way to make the story. It can be there to make more stories easier and faster to tell, and hopefully it's going to increase our output. But I think it needs to still be viewed as a tool, not as a replacement. And I think that's really going to be the case. And a lot of the fear around it is hopefully not warranted. But you know, time will tell.
I do think that, kind of like what you were saying earlier, before we started wrap things up, is that, you know, how now everybody has technology, like, let's say phones, like anybody can make a film, right? In that same breath, if people have become, for the lack of better word, lazy, and they want to use AI to make film, then there you have a opportunity of, let's say, 70 to 80% of the people, let's use AI. Again, these are just random numbers. Then that 20% have way more opportunity to do something authentic. And I think it opens up opportunities for those people. So I get what you're saying, but I think it's all about seizing the moment and, seizing the opportunity. That's all it is.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah. Couldn't agree.
What's next for you that you can talk about? I know I asked you that last time, but you can say anything you can
Sure.
reveal now.
Yeah, the big thing right now is that we're going to be adding to the library. So we're looking to double the size of the library by the end of Q1 next year. So we're putting a lot of our energy into expanding. Part of that is really looking at the optimistic hope that the level of production will increase. Thankfully, in the last month or two, we've seen a resurgence. We've seen a lot more productions coming online. And so we want to make sure that as next year we see production ramping up, we want to make sure that we have as much content in the library as possible. We're also working on doing more rooftop. So being able to create vistas for, you have a scene that takes place in the penthouse of a New York skyrise. We want to be able to give you the environments outside of that window. So it's not just about cars.
Cool.
So we're doing more of that kind of work. And really kind of trying to move the technology forward. So we've got a new product line that we're calling Sim Plates that is fully CG rendered moving environments. So it looks very much like what you see from our photograph plates, but they were created entirely in a computer. Those answer certain needs. Some things are really difficult to photograph. We have a joke around the office that when a client calls up and asks for rural night, if you think about those two words, that's black. There's no rural night means you can't see anything. You're in the middle of nowhere. There's no lights. Maybe there's the moon. So usually what they mean is we want a forest and we want to see light coming through the forest from the distance. And so filming that practically means we have to light miles and miles and miles of forest road. And in the past, we've actually budgeted it out to see what it would cost for 30 Musco lights or BB lights to line a forest. It's really prohibitive. So that's much easier to do in CG. Procedural forests are pretty robust today, and we can we can copy and paste an infinite amount of light wherever you want it. So certain circumstances like that, sim plates are really a good way to approach things that might otherwise be too challenging. Doing period, where we want to be able to have 1930s cars in the background or locations that don't exist anymore, things like that. So we're really excited about that. Yeah, and then it's also really just whatever the next email that comes in that says, hey, we want to do this other thing that you've never done before. That's the stuff that makes me really excited, is when we get to play around and develop new toys and find new ways to do it.
That's great. Well, that's awesome. Thank you so much, man, for the chat. I truly appreciate it. I would love it if it's possible, that video that you showed of Christy Hall. The audio was a little low on that.
Oh yeah, I can send you the clip.
Yeah, if you can, that'd be great. And amazing talking. Please give my regards to Alicia. I'm looking forward to talking to her when the next season comes out. So appreciate it, and happy Thanksgiving to you.
Happy Thanksgiving to you and to your audience as well. Really appreciate it.
Thank you, sir. Take care.
Cheers. Talk soon.
Bye.